Of King Zone Dragon X, who the favorites were.
KT roster.
Welcome back guys to LCK Spring Split Week 9. Before heading into today's series, we're gonna have a review of last week and a preview of this week. So technically it's gonna be a double view analyst test show joined by Mina Kim, our beautiful host of LCK, and also Victory and Captain Jack. So only 2 weeks remaining for the second round robin, and we're gonna be heading off to the playoffs. So we are having a bit of a figure of the playoff right now. We know which team will definitely make it in and which team will not, but still there are unexpected results awaiting, so we have to keep our eyes on it. Especially the competition in the middle rank is so fierce, so we'll have to wait and see who can actually find their tickets in their hand. So these are the issues of last week. First of all, Griffin did secure their spot in the playoff, but they had a very unexpected losing streak last week. It was the first one was up against Genji. They actually had a clean sweep up against Griffin, and also Africa took them down with the roster of Dread, Clean, Sun, Aiming, and Jelly. It's a big issue all around the globe right now, so maybe some people are saying that they are lacking catching up with the new meta. However, Captain also thinks that losing might help them find out some better strategies and better draft. And the second issue is that Sandra is the definite OP currently. She's having a 1,000 pick and ban rate, and also she has an 81% of win rate. So it is the card that secures a victory to any team, so I think all the teams have to keep their eyes on it, whether to ban it out or whether to just first pick it. And we have good news and a bad news here. Griffin made it to the playoff, and GNR are down in the relegation. They have to prepare for the promotion series. So GNR is still trying to find out the best draft, the best entries for them themselves. So I hope they can find out the best strategy for them and perform well at the promotion series. We're wishing all the best of luck for all the players and all the head coaches of GNR. And moving on, we're talking about Deft right here. He climbed up to the first place of LCK MVP standings. Now he's up with 1,100 MVP points. He actually broke the tie with Chovy. That he's going to make sure to take down KT Roaster. The last one is KT's score. He was the first player to hit 500 match in LCK. So it took him a year to break this record because he was the first player to hit the 400 matches in LCK, and now he made his milestone up to 500. And the most surprising thing is that he is the only player currently in LCK who has participated every single season of LCK. Victor is speaking of esports, speaking of the player having their apex, and all the players have the moment of falling down, but Score performing so consistently is the one that he has as his biggest strength. And speaking of Captain Jack, he was also a player who had a very long range in his career, so his thoughts about Score performing so long. Well, to play consistently, he thinks that the most important thing is mind control, the mentality. Speaking of, he had failed on it, so he's now no longer a pro player, but we are all celebrating Score's record. And as we mentioned before, Griffin is having a bit of a hard time right now, so we also wishing them the best of luck for this week. Moving on to the standings, the first one is the overall standing. So Griffin, they made it to the playoffs, and Junior is going down to the relegation. However, Junior, their win rate is no longer intact, but still they are up in the first place. And besides Griffin and Junior, nothing is actually confirmed, so all the teams will be fighting to the end to secure their spots in LCK or at playoff. So if Hanwha loses today, all teams with 11 victories get their playoff spots confirmed, and if Hanwha picks up at least 2-1 victory, actually SK Telecom can secure their spot in the playoffs. Today, we can find out the destiny of maybe a few teams or maybe one team, SK Telecom. And the teams with 11 victories will be SK Telecom and Sandbox Gaming. And let's check out the KDA standing. Or maybe the MVP standing. As he just mentioned before, Deft in the first place. But the interesting thing is actually Khan and Cuz, because Cuz actually was on 300 points and also Khan, but they have doubled it last week. Cuz picked up MVPs on Gragas and Rek'Sai, and Khan had it with Vladimir, Fiora, and Ryze. Maybe Khan is having his best time with the top carry meta, and Cuz has been performing so well with his improved performance. And this is the KDA's rankings. Top lane, Sword, followed by Khan, Summit, Roach, and Tall. Sword, his record of last week was 5.2, but it's now down in 4.2, and Khan is chasing him with 4.0. Currently, we can say it's a meta of top lane, so I hope all top laners can perform better this week. And moving on to jungle, Tarzan no longer has double digits KDA, but still he has a very dominant stat right here, 8.4, followed by Clint, Canyon, Cuz, and OnFlick. And moving on to the mid lane, there is no big change. And Chovy's KDA still remains with double digits, but last week it was 19, but this week it will be 12.4. And he's now followed by Tempt, Dope, Showmaker, and FLICKR. In the bot lane, it's Viper, Teddy, Nuclear, Ghost, and Deft. Deft newly joined the top 5 ranking positionings of KDA in the bot lane.
쭉쭉 MVP 포인트도 차지하고
As
계속해서
Teft was
올라오고
picking
있는
up
모습입니다. 나머지
MVP
이제
points, he
테디,
was
그리고
also
보스
making his KDA look better. And all the 5 players in this bot lane ranking, they are the aces of their team, so we'll be looking forward to them performing this week. And lastly, support, Lehends still in the first place, followed by Hoyt, Sujin, Mara, and Key. We can still spectate the huge gap between the first place and the second place, so this kind of reflects the dominant performance of Lehends and Griffin.
네, 맞습니다. 자, 이렇게 KDA 순위 확인했고요. 다음 주, 이번 주 대진
Let's check
일정까지
out the
만나보겠습니다.
schedules of this week.
남은 일정들 너무 중요하죠.
네.
Every
오늘
match
정말
counts.
재밌는 경기 준비되어 있습니다. 그리핀 대 한화.
The first match,
그리고
Griffin versus
킹존 대
Hanwha Life,
KT죠.
is a big one, and followed by Kingzone versus KT
다른
Roster.
의미로 중요한 경기들도 쭉쭉 많이 남아 있어요.
There are a lot of crucial matches waiting for us.
2위 경쟁이 아니라 1위로
SKT versus Sandbox tomorrow
굉장히 치열할 수밖에
is one of the biggest ones because it is the competition for the second place. But also, Victory is mentioning about Jinere versus KT Roster. Well, even though Jinere is confirmed their spot in the promotion series, well, KT Roster really needs a victory over here because they are having a hard series coming up, which means that KT can join Jinere Groomings down in the relegations.
진짜 유종의미를 거둘 만한 경기력을 보여줘서 많은 팬분들의 박수갈채를 받았던 전적이 있어요. 그 KT 입장에서도 준비 많이 해야 될 것 같습니다.
네, 이번 주도 정말
KT shouldn't let their guards down. They have to prepare as hard as they can up against Jinere Groomings.
자, 오늘 목요일 첫 경기
So let's move on to today's first game of the series. Thank you.
Thank you so much, G-Sun, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to LCK Spring 2019. I'm Atlas, joined finally once again by Papa Smithy. I feel like it's been absolutely ages since we've shared a desk together.
They've been holding us down. They don't want two Aussies on the desk at the same time. We
Yeah,
should look
that's
into
true.
that, Atlas. We should look into it.
We definitely should. I think there's certainly some foul play afoot. But thankfully, we've figured it out here for today. And starting off, we've got Griffin versus Hanwha Life. And because there's only 2 weeks left, things get very exciting when it comes to playoff standings and things that are going to happen moving forward into those playoffs. So the gauntlet could actually be decided, as for our teams, after some results here today.
And honestly, with series like this, sometimes you need a carrot on the stick to keep things hyped, because you're like, we thought we'd come in today be talking about how the first time these two teams met in the first round, it was the time when Griffin looked vulnerable. The game one, where they fought back from an 8,000 gold disadvantage and Viper picked up a pentakill. But they've got much more recent reasons to be worried. Remember last week against FLICKR and Genji, relegation fodder. Griffin lost both those matches, so both historically and recently, Griffin have a lot to show today. For once we come into a series with Griffin in 2019 and say, Griffin need to prove themselves, otherwise our opinion of them is in flux.
Yep, that's exactly right. And I think that going back to their first matchup is relevant because of how far Griffin fell behind and then were able to just be better players and come back from that 8,000 gold deficit. Will their mental state actually be able to let them do that if it happens again here against Hanwha? And as you can see, they're both coming off 2 losses, but the ones for Hanwha Life Esports were much more difficult. Damwon Gaming and SKT, and they were able to take games off both of them. They were competitive series. And the Damwon one was very interesting because they started with Solon on the roster as well, and they moved back to Tal and they looked much better after that happened. And we'll see who they are going to be starting there towards the top side of the map for Hanwha Life, but I have a feeling Tal is going to retain his spot because he played very well in the win over SKT in game number 1.
Hanwha Life's reputation has always been unable to defeat the teams better than them and being consistently better than the teams at the bottom of the table, so 6th place. They did pick up game wins last week, and they had a better overall week than Griffin. As far as I can tell, it's Griffin's worst week since they were promoted. They have never gone 0-2, 0-2 in a week, and they only picked up a single game last week, so definitely very, very poor. So when you look at this, even though both teams come in 0-2 match score, you actually feel like Hanwha Life showed more. And that's just such a weird thing to consider when it's Griffin. So we'll see if Griffin can fight back today. Looking at remaining schedule, I don't really know how to evaluate a schedule outside the Jinere series. Damwon and Kingzone are both kind of tricky opponents for Griffin based on their level they showed last week. Only 2 matches after this for Hanwha Life. Sandbox going to be tricky. KT, a winnable series. Very interesting to evaluate. 2 teams that, like we mentioned in the first round, awesome matchup between these two. lots of questions last week, and usually only one team each series can answer the questions posed at them, so only one team is going to come out with their heads held high.
Yeah, and this matchup has actually been historically very exciting as well. I mean, there was a very famous Lehends Soraka performance pulling them back from the brink in 2018 as well. So Hanwha versus Griffin is certainly one that can be very exciting. I'm not entirely sure what to expect from this particular match, but the first point here as far as point of the match is less relevant than it might originally look. You know, you look at it and you say 2 consecutive losses, but it's against much more difficult opposition for Hanwha Life. So whether Hanwha can actually take advantage of Griffin falling down is going to be the question mark here. Is look at the KDA plummet, 3.6 for Griffin.
Looking like a balanced team these days, no longer the OPs of Korea. They got something to prove, and we never thought we'd have that to say about Griffin in 2019. We came into the season, everyone saying, is this the undefeated season? And for a long time, it looked like the odds on yes. They beat Sandbox and SKT. They'd done all the hard work, and then they stumble. And we have to now remember, pretty young roster. This is the sophomore slump, you could say, given it's their second split in the LCK, and Griffin will be kind of relieved that they stumbled before finals, right? Because if they just got through with an 18-0 season and then stumbled, they only have one match to play afterwards. They're auto-seeded into the final. They're not there yet. They still need to make themselves mathematically clear of SKT and Sandbox, and we'll find a couple of small highlights, but the lowlights that aren't shown in something like this are actually bigger.
Yeah, exactly right. And this was actually not a bad fight for the FLICKR Freaks. This flash from Lehends was beautiful. This was basically the Lehends game where it was in Elo Hell. His Thresh was unbelievable. Magnetic hooks most of the time, able to set things up here for Griffin, but we know how this game turned out, and it wasn't a victory for Griffin.
And honestly, this FLICKR series, you know, I VOD reviewed the third game. I've talked about this series. It was LS casting.
Yep.
There was some draft stuff that I think I want to see Griffin answer, but there was also FLICKR kind of just playing bold, fast, and loose. It's not like they were playing amazing in this series, and yet it was enough to take down Griffin. And that's the worry here, is we saw a good FLICKR, but we didn't see, say, a FLICKR huge overperformance. We saw Griffin underperforming, and that's something they really need to answer quickly. Meanwhile, Hanwha Life, who also come off 2 losses, I imagine it's going to be more of the same from them, and if it's Sangyoon playing Jinx, at least we'll have something to look forward to.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to make Deft a little bit jealous, you know, so that we get Deft's Jinx in our second series of the night, KT versus Kingzone. That'll be a huge one, but this was fantastic from Hanwha. There are a lot of highlights of the Sangyoon Jinx. You can see him flashing forward to pick up these kills. Teddy nowhere to go. After that, Zap comes in. And Hanwha Life actually just playing really, really nicely. It was turned around in the end. It was an SKT victory, but this is certainly going to be exciting, as Lava versus Chovy is going to be our key matchup, but that's probably not where I would have put it. I would have put it further towards the top side of the map, because Tal's been playing very, very well, and he's up against Sword, largely being made to look like the weakness of Griffin in the last week.
We got some sexy stats here. For example, the spread in CSD at 15 is 18.5.
Oh my god.
Because plus 12.2 against negative 6.3. This says that Chovy's the best laner and that Lava is among the worst. There's more than 10 mid laners.
Yeah, but Lava's roaming has been absolutely fantastic. His damage percent highest as far as the mid laners, and that's a relevant stat as well.
And Lava's played way less games, so I think these stats are skewed against him. Tempter's had some games against easier opposition, so let's introduce the teams. No changes on the side of Griffin. They come in with something to prove, and already you just want to understand what Griffin are we going to see in pick ban, what Griffin are we going to see on the Rift, because if it's last week's Griffin, I think Hanwha Life, they usually beat teams below them, and last week Griffin's performance was below Hanwha Life's.
Yep, that's exactly right. But this squad certainly needs all of your respect. Only 2 losses so far in the LCK. They should be able to turn it all around. CV Max there, standing at the end, wanting to make sure that he can get all of his players back on track. And it's not over yet, of course. They're still looking like they will qualify in first place, but they do need to turn it, because otherwise that gauntlet becomes more and more scary. The Hanwha Life Esports roster, as you can see on your screen, it's not going to be Tempt. It will be Lava, like our key matchup suggested, but there's Tal on the top side. We're not mixing it up. We're not moving back to So-On, anything like that. Hanwha will be retaining their powerhouse top laner, and I do like it, up against Sword. because that 2v2 with the jungle included, bonO has had some early proactive performances, especially if he gets his hands on something like that Olaf.
And I think the last point is important because I feel like his effective champion pool is quite narrow. And this is something that should be clear information to Griffin. But Griffin's drafting sometimes, I feel like it subverts expectation. They get themselves locked into one thought. You know, the elephant in the room is what they focus on rather than focusing on everything, their own strengths and the opponent's weaknesses. So I just don't know what to expect from Griffin. And I think some people can say, you know, almost locked into first spot, maybe they're just coasting. And I understand that logic, but we thought about that last year. We didn't know what to expect. It was their debut season, and then they did peter out when it mattered. So we need to see Griffin bounce back. I'm sure the players, confidence-wise, need to bounce back. So there's something about Griffin. There has been ever since they debuted, but recently that something has gone.
Yeah, and look, as soon as a team finds the weakness of a top squad like this, it's up to Griffin to actually plug that hole, and they just haven't really been able to do it. And it largely comes down to the draft. I think that as soon as we get into the pick and ban, that's where we're really going to get a lot of our questions answered as to what Griffin have actually changed moving into this week. It is week 9. There are only 2 more weeks to go. Hanwha Esports have a chance to knock down the top dogs. It's not necessarily what this squad is known for doing, but if they are limping, they should be able to put them down.
And if Hanwha lose, they're all but eliminated from playoff consideration as well. It's not guaranteed. It's more about Kingzone securing their spot today than necessarily Hanwha being eliminated because they're in a closer battle with Damwon Gaming for 5th. But there's a lot of playoff implications in the last 2 weeks. EU said it first. Every matchup matters. Well, we're very much in an every game matters situation. It's all about securing a spot, and the higher you can get on the standings, the more best of 3s and best of 5s you get to skip.
Absolutely. And now Griffin on our blue side, starting off pick and ban here against Hanwha, who will get that counter pick potentially for the top side of the map for Tal. The Olaf needs to be banned away from bonO. Olaf and Lehends seems to be the champions that bonO can play, and he's had some up and down performances elsewhere. His Gragas relatively notable as being not super hot last week.
We're on patch 9.5, so this week Sylas remains disabled, I imagine because the global consideration around whether it was enabled and disabled was decided the last couple of days, so teams wouldn't have known scrim-wise to be prepared for it this week. So no Sylas in Korea for this week, but Kale is enabled for the first time after the rework. Unsure if we'll see much of it. I did notice Rascal was practicing it, so small chance in our second series, but not expecting it to be a huge consideration outside of maybe a very late pick into some easier laning matchups. How do you lane as Sword is something we're wondering, as Griffin have been unable to recreate the Urgot days, where they could just pick Urgot or Sion and be fine. They might even just try Urgot on patch 9.5. The buffs on 9.6, overall rework and power seems to be a buff, so maybe 9.6 they get the Urgot back, but Sword really did stick out like a sore thumb. Even with counter pick against Keen, it just wasn't working out. Now Tal is an easier assignment, but already they're double banning top lane, even though it is a flex Vladimir in the first round.
Yeah, and the Ryze being banned on the blue side then followed immediately by the Vladimir is interesting. Normally you see the Ryze banned and then it lets you pick up the Vladimir without too many repercussions, but it hasn't really been a Sword champion. It's been mostly Viper that's been performing on the Hemomancer, so Griffin are going to ban that one away, and Tal is very, very strong on that pickup. Has been able to get those flanks in order to win the games. That's the Aurelia being banned away last year, and notable picks that are left open are Kalista, Zoe, and the LeBlanc, all up. And Zoe LeBlanc is actually a big one for this particular matchup. Lissandra also, that we saw highlighted, this was what Griffin left available for Gen G to smash them with, to be perfectly honest. So they've done their homework. They're going to pick that one up for the mid lane.
And it was the one I was going to mention over and above everything, maybe bar the Kalista. I feel like Kalista, Lissandra's kind of a pick your poison, but it's something flexible, and it's something that Sword could play in the top lane as well. Remember,
that's true. Rascal did do that.
Even in outscale matchups, in the early game, Lissandra pushes better than most of the meta champions top side and dives very well with a tempo jungler. So I think it doesn't show anything. And like the desk analyzed, you mentioned this as well, recent win rate for Lissandra as a first pick has kind of been right up there in terms of priority. Speaking of priority, this is a change in week 9 of the LCK of 10. Yorick has kind of fluctuated. It was down last week. It's way up in this matchup. It's something where you can actually potentially have threat on a Lissandra as well. If you catch them with Glacial Path down in the baby cage, you can actually get some kills there. So Going for a first round Yorick is surprising, but maybe it's a heads-up strategy prepared specifically for Griffin.
I actually think it's genius because what are the counter picks into the Yorick? Generally, it's something like a Jax, something that can be very, very aggressive in the laning phase. Is that in Sword's wheelhouse? Absolutely not.
He can lock them in, but obviously his command of the champions doesn't approach players like Keen, some of our top players.
Oh, they're going to do it though.
They're going to go for it. They're going for the champion that fits the occasion, was played in Challengers, one that LS, another cast have been calling for, does very well into Yorick. We know he plays the Fiora, but it's kind of a Cuvée Fiora scenario of it will have priority, but it's not going to outplay 3 people. Jax is the champ. We know where he goes eventually, and there's a chance they flex between Tarzan and Sword, the Jarvan and the Jax. Both of them can go in the jungle and be top lane.
Yeah, and we actually saw this matchup yesterday as well in the LPL. And it was the Jax eventually winning the game, but the Yorick still smashed the lane very, very effectively. So we'll see how it is going to work out here for Griffin. Zoe locked in from Lava, and I find that interesting. His LeBlanc is available, but decides to take the Zoe into Lissandra matchup instead.
Just a very different look from Griffin. Not a lot of teams are not taking any bot laners in the first round, but they're happy to just lock in 3 champions that are very flexible. The lane assignments here, even though you think of conventional logic and you say Jax versus Yorick, therefore Lissandra mid, therefore Jarvan jungle. Not all of that is written in blood, and you could situationally go for a Jarvan, even though it's a really hard lane against Yorick over time, and just have the Jax take over the game elsewhere. So we think we know where things are going, but there's always arguments and theories that can be put into practice. I see a lot of bot lane bans when it comes to the second round here. I think Viper's going to be happy to just pick up whatever, and I wonder if at some point you go back to what worked, and that's flexible bot lane champions for Viper. Even though there's a lot of reasons to go into 80 carries, because now you have multiple schools of effective 80 carries. You've got your Ezreals, you've got your crit 80 carries, you've got Lucian. The Lucian's going to be banned, and you can still go into the non-80 carries if you can play it out, and we know Griffin can play them out. Second ban of Alistar here is actually focusing on Lehends. So Galio, Alistar, Thresh are banned away, but it is a bit peculiar as an actual ban.
Yeah, I'm very confused, just because it would have worked out so well in the hands of Key. We'll see whether this means that they're going to aim for something like that Braum pickup, as Lee Sin is banned away from bonO. That's his 2 effective champions now taken off the board, in theory, but bonO does still have his Zac in his back pocket if they do want to play more of a scaling game.
And Rek'Sai is something he's still practicing, even if it hasn't been effective on stage. Depends what point of the game you think you're focusing on, and without knowing the bot lane, Griffin do have an outscale top laner, but otherwise things are pretty flexible. The Zac obviously gives you a lot of insurance when it comes to level 9 onwards, but there's potentially a target here that Jarvan could look to exploit.
Oh and my goodness, he's just doing it. And that's the Morgana locked in alongside the Vayne. Okay, we'll see whether this is actually going to be able to work. The Black Shield can be very effective.
And it's a team comp that sucks against Baron, that's for sure. Lissandra can't chip the minions away as easily when Baron buff is being worn, and you offer no wave clear on the Vayne. Counter pick support. Key plays a lot of one-offs. Bard is available here. Nami is one that we saw come away last week. So there's a lot of chances you could focus on lane. Nami's very good against Morgana because Black Shield holds almost no value. He's poke it away with the W. The ebb and flow can do a lot. This is the old school Kalista lane that evolved after the hard engage Alistar. We had Nami for the ability to frontline and then be disengage Fate's Called rather than engage Fate's Called. Interesting here, so Hanwha Life get the 2v2 guarantee in the bot lane. Yorick is strong against Jax until he's not. There's a tipping point, but it's around 20 to 25 minutes into the game. Zoe's strong against Lissandra, so there's actually a lot of early priority for Zac to probably get away with his usual farming style. And then you've got Zac against a lot of short-range champions, and there's wave clear problems on the side of Griffin. So Griffin do have some nice things on their side. It's not a game 1 in draft, but you look at Hanwha Life's red side draft, you say, good job.
Yeah, I actually really, really like it. I also like Nami having the extra protection of the Fate's Call, because normally you get the Fish Lady on your team and she just gets completely smashed if she's ever caught out of position. We actually saw that in the hands of Tucson. He was targeted very effectively, and now they've got that big buff.
Nami is a god champion in the laning phase, but when the mid game comes around and she has to roam to lanes, she doesn't roam very well, she doesn't ward very well because she just dies, like you mentioned. However, Fate's Call means you can lead with your face, you can poke from the front, and get out. So that's what the Callista provides. Good situation to be thrown in if you're winning as well.
Yeah.
It's not her usual spot, but she'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Very exciting to see how these are going to work out, but it's a little bit of a worry for you Griffin fans out there because of all of the extra early game lane priority that Hanwha Life will have for themselves. I'm looking towards that top lane. I'm looking to see whether Sword can actually punish this Yorick matchup because we know Tal is so good at this champion and Sword needs to prove himself on the counter pick. A lot of questions to be answered here as we get into game number 1. Okay, Griffin versus Hanwha, game number 1. Griffin on the blue side.
And because it's the last 2 weeks of the season, a lot of backseat drivers going to be watching on today's games. If Hanwha Life lose and Kingzone have any victory, they are guaranteed to be in top 5. They will make playoffs. So Kingzone, you would say, based on the nameplates, based on the score lines, are favored to join the playoffs. SK Telecom T1, if Kingzone lose their series later today, are guaranteed top 3. Thus, they will skip over the all-annoying best-of-3 wildcard match that opens up the playoffs here. So terminology can be a bit tricky in Korea, but a lot of potential ramifications of today's games. We're guaranteed something to talk about at the end of the day, and we get something to talk about in the laning phase. Griffin second-rounded the Vayne Morgana. And what that means is Morgana, I mean, it usually guarantees that Vayne will have a farm lane because you plug and play a Braum or some sort of tank support that's about an all-in threat, and Morgana is the shield to that. You think of the Caitlyn Morgana meta to answer Zyra Khan. However, the next level on that is to go for a laning support like Nami, who doesn't care about the Black Shield like those all-in supports that have no lane presence outside of an all-in. Therefore, the Nami was taken to further guarantee the lane. And I like the fact that Key, just like his Bard games, is happy to be bold and play for lane. Yeah,
and also Key is just a fantastic caster support player. Of course, he is known for the Bard more than anything else, but his Morgana has been fantastic in the past, and champions like the Nami really do fit into his wheelhouse. So I do like playing towards your strengths, especially if that means strength in the laning phase. But Tarzan, he's coming in already. That's the binding to land after the knock-up. Heal comes out, but Key will be dying, and first blood will go to Viper.
And Tarzan, after his criticism last week, is trying to rewrite it. Jarvan can gank early. Not a champion he's shown priority on. Red buff into lane gank is something we so rarely see, but they scouted out that there was no ward in the brush that would have spotted him. He didn't show himself on the river ward that we see put down by Hanwha Life, and already a kill. Suddenly Nami, before that level 6 where she can get out, has been punished, and vertical jungling threatened by Tarzan.
Yeah, not threatened, actually going to ensue here as the blue buff will be taken. Lehends going to turn up, Dark Binding going to help him out. A few extra autos come in, and Tarzan should be able to take this entire southern side of the jungle away from the Zac. Zac will get himself a Rift Scuttler, but that's about it.
And Zac, I actually will further that point, because there is a cost to this, because now Zac will get a full jungle clear. Because you know that Jarvan's going to get jungle bot side, you can go blue and power farm the Gromp, and there's no way Jarvan's going to be there. So you actually get a full jungle clear and a scuttle of Zac, and usually a Jarvan is going to be invading Zac and delaying Zac's level 6. The reward Hanwha Life gets for there being a bot lane gank is the fact that Zac gets the full clear. Now, of course, you lost a kill on the bot side. It's not just a summoner, but bonO takes a camp, and he's actually loading up for something here as well.
Yep, you can see Ward going to be cleared out there by Chovy. He's teleported back to lane, and bonO decides that he's not going to actually be able to go aggressive here against Sword. Scryer's Bloom not going to spot the Zac, but he cancels the back. They are going to look for it. Morning Mist isn't going to land. And in we go. Elastic Slingshot isn't going to hit, as there's the baby cage, but Leap Strike is going to be good there from Sword. Tarzan makes his way through. Good double knock up there as Tal. Already very low, but Sword, he's the one getting taken down to sub 100 health. There's the bonk. Sword flashes away. Ward goes in, the flash from bonO to follow up and even out the kill score.
Important kill there for Hanwha Life. I think they actually approached the gank in every which way and were just speeding through it. I think they made some mistakes, we'll see in the replay, but they get the kill anyway. Jack's not so strong at skirmishing in the early game. Sword's able to TP in pretty proactively and stop a bad freeze or losing a lot of minions because Jarvan sticks around. Answering kill to Hanwha Life, and bonO picking it up and getting some more gold is important because Jarvan will have more camps to clear.
Yeah, and he's not going to have his top side of the jungle removed. Let's check this one more time.
So level 3, you don't have much engage range. Watch when the CC is used. The fact that there's a leap strike out of the cage means the cage is used very early in this case. I think they kind of conspire to get the lowest possible value out of their abilities, and yet, Sword is squishy. Tal gets a nice fat flash off, and the CC landing here is enough to get the kill onto bonO. So bonO gets the level 4. Again, his level 6 is going to be earlier than expected when Zach was drafted into Jarvan. But the counterpoint is that bot lane should also be more farm than expected on Viper, and also a kill to Viper because of the level 2 gap.
Yeah, absolutely. Sangyoon, he's going to go back to base as we can talk about the bottom side of the map. He goes, gets himself his Berserker's Greaves, as most Callistas are wont to do in the early stage of the game, and Key's going to get a bit of a roam on here. First Drake is going to be the Mountain Drake. KDA 8.0 in 4-0 over the LCK in total here for Key.
And Key was always one of those I love the counter pick on red side support players who was happy to throw out Bard, Nami, and picks like that, so happy to see the record is also nicely intact there. But has played in the LCK for many, many splits now since 2016 started, so because of that, a lot of potential games.
Value.
Chovy gets so much experience of gold there.
Oh my goodness. That
All
feels real
ones.
bad from bonO. Gets himself the big popcorn chicken.
He was already level 6, so it doesn't create the level 6 versus level 5 dichotomy that something like that can cause, but delays Zach there. Frustrating moment before, and we already know that in Korea, Lissandra has been popping off in recent memory.
And also up 20 CS in that lane. Of course, yes, some of them will be because of the Raptors, but certainly fantastic here as Lava gets back to lane a little bit late there to pick up the minions that are dying to the turret.
Lissandra's have been just doing better and better in laning phase. The time when Zoe does really well against Lissandra's a little bit after some levels, so it's only now that the matchup goes a little bit towards the side of Zoe. So in the early game, Chovy predictably been able to put out a lot of pain. Do notice Viper hasn't gone Hail of Blades on the Vayne. This is the press the attack. I'd love to know if it was into Domination Tree second. We don't have secondary runes on our overlay right now. I assume
he did just get a zombie ward, so I think he does have Domination second. It's just not the Taste of Blood Ravenous Hunter that we would have expected.
Would have been one or the other. Here's bonO, level 5.
Yeah, Black Shield. Lehends is going to use it very selfishly there as the heal has to come out.
Binding hits onto bonO, which means he's not actually able to follow up the first part of the queue there. Very important binding hit by Lehends.
Yep. Sangyoon not going to have the Silver Bolts procced on him either, and that means that Viper very much loses out on that trade. Holds on to his barrier though, so he'll be all right. And only one summoner spell actually invested as Tarzan makes his way down to save this bottom lane. Level 5 still for Hanwha Life's bottom lane. They need to get that level 6 for Sangyoon to keep Key alive in these Jarvan ganks.
You'll notice Jarvan also is going Warrior Jarvan. We see mostly Cinderhulk recently, Peanut the only Warrior Jarvan player.
Yeah.
I can remember recently. I think this plays into my hypothesis on Griffin, where their main win condition is having Chovy and Tarzan able to just take over the map and battle ward as a duo, and having 2v2 power over the enemy. Zach obviously not going to be a strong skirmishing jungler. Warrior Jarvan plus just AP stacking Lissandra is going to be huge burst damage. Speaking of huge burst.
Yep, Binding is going to go wide, but look at the explosion of damage. Tarzan takes out the Callista basically instantly, and Griffin have a 2-kill lead now, bottom side of the map.
And they got power to wield with a Warrior Jarvan and also Lissandra coming on. Warrior may not be done, but the damage is clear. Cleanse ain't doing nothing for Sangyoon. He keeps Splash. The invasion onto the Zac is continued, but they can't take away Lava's blue.
Yeah, Lava's going to be able to get it with that paddle star. Ebb and Flow gets his health back there just a little bit as well. But look at this, turret plate to go into the hands of Viper. 1 kill, 1 assist. This Vayne is about as accelerated as you can be, and even gets solo gold for that turret plate at the same time.
In the mid lane as bonO does miss. Accelerated when your CS vs CS sounds like a play-by-play caster overstating, but it's not, Atlas. It's actually really important that against Callista, considered the strongest possible dueling AD carry, and the Nami counterpick, you're going CS for CS, and you have things like turret plates and kill involvement. So this Vayne is actually, like you aptly described, huge. Cleanse is used to try to cleanse Flash, but he doesn't actually find the time to Flash there, so
yeah.
You could definitely look at that and say, was he just fail healing? But I think the cleanse was to cleanse Flash. Still wasn't able to. Nice CC overlapping. And goodbye to Sangyoon. More advantages to Griffin.
Yeah, Tal's picked up a cull here on the top side of the map. He's actually behind by 11 CS. Going to pick up a few of these minions as Sword doesn't have teleport to make his way back to the lane. But the Jax has been doing A-okay, as we would expect based on the champions, but not as we would expect based on the players necessarily. With how good Tal is at the Yorick, and how Sword has struggled on more aggressive picks.
And it's just not a surprise to people that Griffin beat Hanwha Life, right? If Griffin win this game, of course it's Griffin. But to people who watched last week, just like me, you came away with questions. For example, the Gen G series, Gen G goes for the very greedy Zac scaling comp. Griffin says, well, screw you. It's time to go Xinjiao and play super aggressive. And they couldn't do it, Atlas. They failed at execution on an aggressive draft. So Tarzan going Warrior Jarvan and Lissandra taking over the map with strong 2v2. On paper, possible. In the past, possible. But something we needed to see again with the fact they couldn't pilot a draft like this last week. So I like the fact that Tarzan's come in hot and heavy with his ganks. They've come off, and Griffin have played around early aggression in their jungle rather than the passive farming that has dominated their LCK spring jungle performances.
Yep. And doing it with a level 2 gank as well is the best part. Ebb and Flow into Sangyoon is going to keep him healthy. Lehends' position is known here in this rush. There's the flash forward, gets the ultimate out. That's the tidal wave to try and help them out. But Lehends does have the black shield on himself. That's a great condemn into the wall, but it's an even better knock-up from the Fate's Call and Key, using the extra range advantage to get himself all the way back out as well. Lava's going to make this a man disadvantage for Griffin. That's a huge minion wave, and I just don't know whether they're going to be able to fight this one. In goes bonO one more time. Not going to be able to get the boot back because the Black Shield stays alive. Ignite down onto Viper there as Lava uses it that he picked up earlier, but another condemn into the wall. Sangyoon has the heal, tries to get himself away, but it's not going to work. He's going to die as well. It's 3 kills as Lissandra turns up, and bonO has to flash to safety.
The teleport there, the roam from Chovy, they're always going to hit the TPs harder. They got the Lissandra. This is why she's so prized, even if some of the lane matchups don't work. They get a huge trade-up in the bot lane. Hanwha Life re-engaging with that teleport available was questionable, Atlas, and the punishment is severe.
Absolutely. And look at this. Chovy gets to roam down with the teleport. He's still got a 30 CS advantage and is now 1-0-2.
So the moment that Sangyoon and Key re-hit the minion wave, you know bonO has to be coming in with Elastic Slingshot. Otherwise, with summoners down, it's just a poor decision from Hanwha Life. Griffin know this, they respond to it, they expect it and anticipate it. And it's Jarvan Lissandra with ults available. They're always going to hit the skirmish harder. There are no teleports coming from the top lane. It's Yorick, right? He's not going to be able to change anything. So another trade-up for Griffin, and suddenly Hanwha Life are in a huge gold hole.
And now, if bonO wants to attack a theoretically winning lane, it has to be Sword up here on the top side, who's actually winning. As bonO doesn't look like he can actually find a way in. It's getting from bad to worse, and as you can see, it's represented in the gold already. Very close to 13 minutes into the game, and 3,000 gold is actually a huge advantage here for Griffin.
We know that Hanwha Life, at the end of the day, had a lot to work on in the lanes, but they've gone awry ever since that level 2 gank was pulled off in bot lane. Looking to try to just 4-man the Jax.
Yep, Leap Strike going to be used very, very well there by Sword to get out of the way. Tidal Wave is going to be pre-thrown, and that makes Key look very silly, but they're going to lose a tower on the bottom side. Tempo disadvantage is huge here for Hanwha, and Griffin are going to take so much.
Just like that first gank attempt onto the Jax, it all looks very sloppy today from Hanwha Life. It's almost like they woke up on the wrong side of the bed.
Yeah.
They go in super early with the Zac. They don't wait for the tidal wave, so it just comically misses as it glides in, and then Lava's going to be caught on the turret.
Yep, hasn't actually used the portal jump yet, uses it very late as Tarzan almost goes down to the turret, but calculated. He will survive with just a sliver of health, and Hanwha, in the meantime, are just theoretically wasting time on the top side of the map, having to take so long to take down this turret, which is just a trade for the bottom lane that's going to be inner as well.
And the frustrating part for the coach is they make the correct decision of, we can't lane with double flash disadvantage in the bot lane. Let's just go and pile up onto Jax's lane. He has a lot of things, but not wave clear. We'll get objectives and guarantee some gold pre-14 minutes to be shared around our carries. But then the execution is way off, right?
Yeah.
They go in too early, disconnected from the duo lane. The Nami ult is so late because the Zac goes in so early. The coaching there was the smart move. They make the right counter rotation, but the execution is wholly off, and you're going to have to really wake up these players. Maybe some prescriptions of caffeine between games going to be needed, because if they don't wake up, this series could be over in an hour and a half.
Yeah, we can actually hear a lot of the fans getting a little bit excited, and I think that might be aiming to try and wake up Hanwha Life Esports. I find it very interesting because, you know, here at Lowell Park, we've got the new cold brew that actually is very, very strong. You know, no ice this time around, and so therefore, far more caffeine for your buck.
I mean, our eyes are on. We had our
oh, yeah.
portions of caffeine. We are cold brew fiends over here. I think you're on the coffees these days.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a latte guy myself. And so from being a Melbourne boy, you know, we like a bit of milk.
Again, the question should be for the Hanwha Life players, milk or no milk. It should not be coffee or no coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
They've just been really off the boil here, and that's why Hanwha Life has always fighted to deceive, because in the clutch, this happens more often than not. I don't know if they're in their own heads, but right now they've just been so second best in the first 15 minutes to a team that's usually pretty slow to start themselves. Griffin's game 2s were the ones you were scared of, not their game 1s. If you remember, it was an 8,000 gold lead for Hanwha Life that had to be overthrown by Griffin the first time these two teams played. Feeling like a long time ago when Griffin had the 5,000 gold lead this time.
bonO is going to be able to escape there using the blast cone and the elastic slingshot. Looked a little bit dicey for the Zac, but thankfully has a bit of a long disengage range. Sword here on the bottom side of the map just having a great time. On the Jax, we saw this yesterday, RNG piloting the Jax, but a large reason why it didn't necessarily crush the lane is because he had Uzi on his team, and Uzi gets priority in all side lane farm from about 9 minutes into the game. So it's probably why Amazing J wasn't able to get himself too much of a lead. Sword not in that position though. He's well and truly even with Tal, and as the game goes on, it's just going to get better and better for this Jax. Shelly is going to go down 16 minutes in, so no turret plates to come out from her, but they're just going to be able to create more map control. Just control in general as the binding is going to sneak by. As Viper going aggressive underneath this turret. That's going to be the ult used there, but Viper now has to use the heal as he has to use barrier at the same time. That's a terrible move, but they're just too far ahead are Griffin. That's going to mean that the Jarvan's going to be able to secure it. Good boot back there onto Chovy, but he's made it to the relative safety of underneath this turret and still has his Frozen Tomb available. Tarzan waiting for it, but doesn't actually have enough damage after that ebb and flow heal comes in. The Jarvan may be overextended just a little bit, and the bottom lane has remained top side of the map, but bonO's not going to be able to attach his Stretch Armstrong arms to that ward in time. Hanwha get nothing.
Tarzan able to clean up the mess that Viper and Lehends began. Their turret dive was ill-fated and almost turned on. Besta flashed in for a kill and found a Jarvan, not the Prince he was looking for. Goes down in that one, and now they continue to push up. When you make all the right early moves, you can do it a bit sloppily, and often you can just smack him with your wallet, as my man Atlas is all about. The wallet's looking pretty thick here for the side of Griffin, and unfortunately, Hanwha Life Esports, apparently payday is later in the month.
Yeah, well, we're going to have a look at this comedy of errors one more time. The ultimate comes in. Lehends says, well, maybe that was an odd choice, as Viper also doing the damage calculation, realizing he might die, but Tarzan saving the day beautifully.
They took about 1,600 damage from turrets. They had to blow a barrier on Vayne. It was not well done by Griffin, but didn't matter because Tarzan was in the right spot. Usually, that's something we can just assume, but hasn't been the case recently. Didn't actually spy if Chovy ended up dying, but because we cut away from this after Zac became involved. But they got the stun done here. bonO gets the flash in, but still tanky. The aftershock only wears out towards the end of this. You can see it on the screen, timeout there. So actually, like you mentioned, very healthily able to disengage. That gold lead, it's almost Hanwha Life territory. It's almost 8,000.
Yeah, and look, Hanwha are going to have to do their best Griffin versus themselves impression if they want to come back here. But Viper is a Vayne that has a Ginsu's Rage Blade lead over his opponent.
Oh.
Yeah. He's 3-0-3 in comparison to the 0-3-0 of the mid-game spiking Kalista. That is, yeah, a dagger ain't necessarily as good as an entire Ginsu.
The only good news story is that Hanwha Life, Yorick is basically a Cull cash-in ahead of his opponent, but that's not enough given the matchup and the fact that Jax outscales very hard. As the items come in, and in every other lane, it's basically a 2,000 gold lead where it matters. So because of that, Hanwha Life are in disarray, map control. This could be one of those maps that 70% of it, every jungle camp, bar maybe the Wolves or Krugs, is going to go the way of Griffin. They've got Chovy in a side lane that right now, with a TP that Lava can't answer, kind of feels like all the dominoes are set up, and Griffin should be getting a lot of free objectives off the back of a very smart first 20 minutes.
Yeah, precisely. It is going to be a Cloud Drake. Not exactly a favorite, especially if you have a chat to LS about Dragon priorities, but 8,000 gold in the lead. Bit of extra movement speed should be pretty good here for Griffin, and they'll just basically take everything that they want. 30 seconds until Baron rears his ugly head. that could be the next target here for Griffin to try and put the last nails in this coffin. But man, it feels like we're welcoming Griffin back into the LCK, and I think a lot of it comes down to Tarzan changing up how he plays his early game. That level 2 gank was fantastic. bonO's going to try and have one last-ditch effort, but Tarzan's just going to walk out of there. Tidal Wave goes completely wide as Julia is going to be the first target. She gets knocked up. That's the flag and drag into the Cataclysm, and immediately Lehends goes for the engage as well. It's a double stun as Chovy comes on down. Fate's Call isn't going to bring Key far enough out as Lehends. He's going to die. No stopwatch is going to keep him alive. Sword's just having a field day in the enemy base, and despite the fact that it's only Sangyoon going down, Griffin will be able to claim so much from this.
They're just styling on them on the map list. It's just too easy for Griffin. We liked a lot of what Hanwha Life did in draft. They had strong lanes to play around, and then a gank bot lane and other lanes not going as expected. Some sloppiness from Hanwha Life, and it didn't matter what their lanes looked like. Griffin could have any 5 champions, and with how they've just been able to play solid, proactive League of Legends with some mistakes along the way, it's been too good for Hanwha Life in game number 1.
Yeah, absolutely. And now this is a Griffin squad as we move into the replay that has a Vayne and a Jax in an advantageous position in the early game. Just insane. Terrifying.
And the fact that this is all happening while Jax is split pushing lets you know that throwing 5 men in, they lose 5v4 in a big way, and the Jax gets free time to push. The Frozen Throws come in a little bit earlier. Key dies, and then you can see Tal dying here as well. Could have just been a full clean ace in a 4v5. They're spared that ignominy, but no other ignominies are going to be spared for Hanwha Life.
Yep, Lehends also has his Ardent Sensor now completed, so Viper's going to be even stronger, moving towards his first Sheen item. Sorry, not Sheen item, Zeal item. Not sure what he actually wants to pick up here, but he could pick up basically anything. I'd like Phantom Dancer just to get Battle Vayne online.
Well, how about a Battle Jarvan? This ain't no Cinderhulk, but he can backline with the Guardian Angel Nocturne impression in the build. It's basically a Nocturne build, but you get to be more proactive on the Jarvan, as we saw as early as level 2. Hanwha Life's only thing they can do right now is put down multiple control wards and say, what about a Baron steal? But it's 2-level advantage for Tarzan over the enemy jungle. I don't think Griffin are going to leash the Baron to stealable range. So Hanwha Life, very strong team at contesting Baron from the red side because Lava is on the Zoe, so you can Paddle Star and Trouble Bubble over the wall. And Zac, you can't actually scout with Shallow Vision because he can just put down 1 control ward and engage from 1300 range. So because of that, Griffin can't just make this about the Baron, but we know they don't need the Baron.
Nope.
Much earlier than expected on the Vayne and Jax comp. Are they way ahead? They're just going to make it an honest end, and very little Hanwha Life can do to change anything.
Well, Viper's just happily sitting by himself here on the top side, just knows how much stronger he is than every member of Hanwha Life Esports. Tal's going to move over. This wave hasn't actually been dealt with by Sword on the bottom side of the map. He's taking a Rift Scuttler at the moment, will be moving back down, but still a couple of minion waves to get through before he actually threatens the inhibitor. Possible engagement here in the jungle, but Trouble Bubbles in this particular area do need to be respected. Now Viper is looking for a back timing for himself. No vision available. Oh no, there is, but he's still able to get out of there. And the shield will guarantee it there from Lehends. He has gone with the Phantom Dancer, 900 gold bounty. This Vayne is like all of our solo queue nightmares. And I'm getting reminded of some games that I didn't very much enjoy. This is certainly enemy team's Vayne right now.
Completely agree with you, Atlas, and it wasn't like he was pulling off sick outplays, right? We saw them super mess up under turret, but be babied by the fact that they had all their summoners up at a point where Vayne should be punished. Your enemy jungler also was better than your jungler in this game. It's kind of an issue that happened. The Zac was actually heavily punished in a way that Peanut wasn't when Genji and Griffin met, so credit to Tarzan for leveling up here. I think he easily will win MVP for game number 1. Anything else would be something I'd be incredulous about.
He's 100% kill contribution at the moment. He made sure that he won the bottom lane within 3 minutes of the game. Yeah, I'd say that he's probably on his way to an MVP.
And when I think it comes to how many of Griffin's previous errors can we now say, okay, counterpoint present. Definitely for jungle, they showed they can play proactive Jarvan. The top lane was won by the Jax, but I feel like that wasn't really about Sword's play. Like, it's not like he won a skill matchup here. It's just that some things went against him. It felt like Tal was playing very defensively, even though the win early game was bot lane. And it wasn't like he won a skill matchup, like he lost so heavily against Keen. So still, the Jax works against Hanwha Life in game number 1. That's still a data point that Griffin can show. And the Jarvan point is definitely pot kettle black.
And a little bit of it is, oh, okay, there's actually a fight that's going to break out. Lava has to flash. One more auto from Viper will do it. Gets him as he gets the vision as well from the Scryer. Julia, she's going to be the next target. That's theoretically 2 kills. Over to Griffin now as well as Viper uses his final hour to take down the enemy red buff. And now with Lava dead as well as the Maiden dead on the side of Tal. Griffin could theoretically go for a Baron if they want to.
Pretty generous use of the word fight. Basically, Vayne tumbled into the enemy team. They tried to run away and one person died. So
yeah.
It was very much some assassinations there, Viper style and frontlining. On the Vayne, it was a Jugger Vayne moment, and we don't even have Jinx in this game. Speaking of Vayne, she's on the Baron, and, well, bonO's around. How much can he actually do?
Is he, though? He's going to get the kidnap off, he's going to get the flash, and that means that Griffin are going to get the Baron. There is absolutely no way that Zach can get his smite in there. Tarzan takes a lot of damage from it, but now the Jax is super powered in this split push. Hanwha, I don't know how they're supposed to hold on to this one. They're now just getting driven into impossible decisions to make to try and defend this base.
We're just looking for Hanwha Life to bounce back in game number 2. I would say they are
I'd
very,
probably stop talking about this game in comms if I was them.
It's one of those things where if you did the standard play-by-play thing and asked me, what do Hanwha Life have to do to win, it's Griffin have to make multiple colossal mistakes for there to be any stakes left in game number 1. So I hope that Hanwha Life has spent the last 5, 6, 7 minutes talking about game number 2. Only some small adjustments, and again, it was execution rather than necessarily draft that we really didn't like about Hanwha Life in this game. Griffin should feel good about their performance here, especially Tarzan. I like the proactivity we're seeing. The reason why I've been so kind of off the hype train on Griffin, apart from them obviously being a good team, when it comes to them being a great team, it's been inactivity in the early game. There was good activity in the early game this time, so a lot of things being answered by Griffin in that domain.
Yeah, and actually I want to echo that point just a little bit as well, because I think a lot of it has to do with the draft. And a lot of it has to do with Hanwha actually making some good assessments based on the losses that Griffin suffered in last week's games. But then, unfortunately, it not working is, speaking of not working, Sangyoon down to about 100 health and has to get the hell back to base. This might open the base here for Griffin to come in and take down their first inhibitor of the game. But being able to pick the Yorick that early, that was a flex, saying that Sword isn't going to be able to do anything about it. And I can understand exactly why Hanwha would make that decision, and Griffin have actually answered it and done a decent job as the fight is going to break out. Kidnap does work, but it doesn't actually bring anyone back forward because Black Shield is just too strong. Fate's Call comes out there from Sangyoon, but Sword is just too powerful. He dives on forward. It's a triple kill. Instantly make that a quadra. My God, that's insane. It's only the triple to come forward as Chovy steals that one away, but the Jax is too strong. And Hanwha, they have to reevaluate. We're going to go to game number 2 with a Griffin that has reawoken after a terrifying Week 8. Week 9 looking way better.
Sorry guys, we couldn't show you any team fights, just an execution, a firing range every time. I spent that team fight watching Viper to see if any tumble was defensive. Every tumble was further in towards the fountain. Every tumble was aggressive because there was only good inroads that time for Griffin. They dismantle Hanwha Life. It is a confidence-injecting victory. But I hope Hanwha Life stick with the theory of the Yorick blind pick and adjust the tools around it rather than just abandoning the draft process they've come into this series with, because the execution is what hurt them. I think the draft certainly could have been worked, but not with a performance in the first 10 minutes like game number 1.
Yep, absolutely. That level 2 gank from the Jarvan sealed the deal. You get Vayne first blood in that lane, and the Nami that was picked for lane basically doesn't work. The Kalista that is so strong in the mid-game doesn't get a mid-game because she had early game items until that game was over and about 25 minutes in. So just not a lot of answers for Hanwha, and Griffin basically figured out exactly what they needed to do and did it. But in other times that they were winning, in the games that they won last week, it was Viper popping off that allowed them to do so. So whether they can win from other lanes is going to be another question. That theoretically was one from the jungle. However, it was to get the bottom lane ahead and make sure that Sangyoon and Key weren't able to do anything. Next time around, I want to see bonO play more aggressively bottom side of the map with a pick that isn't a Zag.
And honestly, at the end of the day, Hanwha Life have talked about really scouting out their talent, focusing on the mental side of the game, and going for untiltable players. You have Sangyoon here, of course, who's very long-standing. Game 1 is the sort of game where it should be very easy for Hanwha Life to throw it out. Look at the damage numbers here, just the sheer lack of damage altogether for a 27-minute game from Hanwha Life. But the point I'm trying to get to is, This game as a pro player should be, okay, this game was over at 6 minutes, throw it out, reset the mental. This should be an easy reset. This was not the tilter of being 8,000 gold ahead and then penta-killed by Viper in a comeback. This was lost very early in the piece, so hopefully Hanwha Life show a completely new side in game number 2.
Yeah, they actually, you know, they can say that we went for a strategy that had merit and then it didn't work, right? And that's totally fine. So this isn't one of those tilting games, and I'm glad that you bring that up because we could still have a bit of a corker for a game number 2. We'll see whether Hanwha can actually bounce back and whether or not blue side, as it has been in first series, is actually going to work out. Ladies and gentlemen, this is still potentially a series. We're going to go to a short break. When we get back, game number 2.